Welcome to this morning's live streaming as your update on the progress of enterprise bargaining. So Susan, yesterday we had some pretty important clauses that we discussed and those clauses related to academic workloads, professional workloads, and what else?
We talked a little bit about casual...
Thank you, casual academic staff employment.
That's right.
There is a video that will be available to you that summarises what we talked about at yesterday's meeting, so I would encourage you to have a look at that. I'm also going to encourage people to think about any questions that might have arisen to you over the last couple of months as we've been providing you with progress reports. Thanks to everybody who came along to the forums that we ran on each of the campuses. It was great to meet some of you, and it was really useful to hear from you about the things that either aren't so clear or things that are still very important to you. So thanks very much for your contribution at those forums. And as I said to some of you then, I'm pretty confident that when we get to the stage of finalising an agreement, you'll see reflected in that some of the suggestions that you've made over the last 12 months. So I would encourage you to send through any more questions or any more comments to our EB website. We look at it frequently and we respond both on the website, and when it's appropriate, we'll respond via these live stream opportunities as well. Now, I think we have received one question, haven't we, Susan, from one of our colleagues via the EB website. Would you like to share that in our response?
Yes, of course, we did. And I will mention it was an anonymous question as well, so it's good to know that, it's good for you to know that if you feel that you want to submit an anonymous comment or question, there is an opportunity for you to do that through the website. So the question we had, Denise, was around the flex scheme and around the use of overtime in connection with flex leave, flex time. When we went back and looked at the clause that we have put on the web, we realised that that was one of the sub-clauses that we had moved out. So we're very happy, of course, to put that back in if people feel that that is something that they would like to be able to reflect on in the clause. So that exact sub-clause will be left as it currently is, which explains how people can use overtime in connection with their flex time.
Okay, great. And I think that raises quite an important point, because while at these sessions and at the forums we've been talking about changes that we propose to the enterprise agreement, a lot of the existing and current enterprise agreement remains unchanged, doesn't it, Susan?
Absolutely, absolutely, as in word for word.
Okay, and if I pick up on your word for word comment, a number of the other proposed changes on the part of the university do relate just to rewording. So we have always identified that we would like to have a more simple, plain language enterprise agreements, and as a consequence, some of our proposed changes relate to just making the wording less ambiguous, more clear, shorter and more concise.
That's absolutely right, and the unions as well have agreed that there has been ambiguity in the agreement in the past, and that is one thing we're all striving to do, is to remove that ambiguity, to make the document easier for you to read, because you're the staff member and it's your agreement. So that as we move through, if you go to the document, it will be easier for you to read and absorb and understand what is there.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that my video, when people watch it, will provide a very concise summary of yesterday's conversations and discussion, but perhaps we should just pick out a couple of the highlights of yesterday. Maybe, do you want to lead off with professional staff workload?
Sure. So yesterday we talked about the professional staff workload clause, and a couple of things that were highlighted to us. Obviously we've taken very seriously, and we acknowledge that these are things that we can improve. A couple of things in particular. One thing was that currently individual work reviews are exactly that. They're about an individual. The case was made that some people feel that as a team they would like to move forward to have a review of their workload, not simply as an individual. Sometimes individuals don't feel confident to move forward by themselves, or sometimes the work unit is one and therefore needs to move forward as a team. So we've agreed to revise that clause so that teams as well as an individual can move forward to ask for a workload review. The other thing that was brought to our attention is that in a review situation where the employee may not be happy with the outcome of the review that's carried out in their department or unit, that they may refer it to the Executive Director of HR, which is me. And in that case, the agreement at the moment stops there. It simply says it may be reviewed by the Executive Director. So we've certainly agreed to add another subclause there which indicates that there will be an outcome and a determination from my office. So,
Okay, so to close the loop.
Positive move forward, that's right.
Okay, great, thank you. So we did spend quite a lot of time talking about casual academic employment, and we, from the university's perspective, from before the time that we commenced enterprise bargaining, have talked about how important it is that we do develop a set of approaches that recognise and the value that we place and the contribution that our casual academics make to the work of the university. We've been working at the university level to develop quite a comprehensive suite of ways of recognising and enhancing the conditions of our casual academic employees. And one of the things that's been really central to our thinking in all of this has been coming up with some approaches that will provide improved and enhanced conditions for as large a proportion of our casual academic staff as we possibly can, rather than perhaps, as we've done in the past, developing some initiatives that improve the conditions of perhaps just a handful or a small number of casual academics. We recognise that casual academic staff work with us for a whole range of reasons. They're motivated to work with the university for a whole range of different reasons. They themselves have different life circumstances, different professional and career trajectories. So as a consequence, we are looking to enhance and improve the conditions for as many of those casuals as we possibly can. And a lot of those improvements are responses to the sorts of feedback that we've received from our casual academic staff, particularly about some of the structural impediments to engaging with the university. So we are doing as much work as we can in our own internal systems so that we are able to provide extended access for our casual academic staff to things such as their ID cards and library access and access to email and IT systems, for example. So these are things that our casuals have asked for. We want to ensure that our systems will support this kind of thing. So, but it is something that we're working very intensively on at the moment so that we will be able to deliver a package of conditions that allow our casual academic staff to feel more connected to their colleagues and to the university and to stay in touch with us in more seamless kinds of ways, but also to allow them to engage in their own professional development, whether it's through professional development and training activities or whether it's through professional reading via the library's resources, for example.
That's right. I mean, I think there are some real practical measures that we can put into place simply by the way that a casual is entered into our HR system. So we've been looking at how the system can cope with those sorts of things. We've certainly heard the message that casuals suffer through having their email cut off or their access to the library cut off. We understand that. So as Denise says, we are at the moment looking at what we can do with our systems We don't want the system to dictate what we can do, so we're looking at what we can do with our system to make academics, as you say, feel more a part of the university.
And I think we've mentioned on previous occasions that our assessment of the teaching-focused roles that were introduced over the last few years, our view is that for those individuals concerned, they've provided a really positive experience and opportunity, but it's really only addressed the needs of a small number of our casual academic staff. And what we're seeking to do is meet the needs and come up with some strategies that will work for a much larger number of our casual academic staff. However, for those staff who are currently employed in teaching-focused roles, what we're proposing to do is develop a mechanism that will allow those staff members to transition into mainstream academic roles. So I think that's an important development, and I really wanted to reassure people in TFR positions at the moment that the proposals that we're making would lead to a pretty positive outcome for all of you.
Look, absolutely, from a HR perspective, it's probably important just to mention that the proposals we have put forward for TFRs, TFRs would still retain their position. So simply proposing to move away from a TFR work category certainly doesn't affect those current TFRs that we have. So they would be moved into mainstream academic roles and no longer referred to as TFRs.
And those people who are career development fellows, their term of appointment would continue as it would. However, we aren't proposing to continue with CDF roles, are we?
No, no.
I suppose finally, if we move on to our last major clause that we discussed yesterday, and that was the clause that relates to professional staff academic staff workloads. We've already talked about professional staff workloads. So academic staff workloads. At this stage, we are certainly proposing that we would retain the current academic unit level workload committees, composed in very similar ways to the current composition that our academic colleagues are familiar with. However, it's our view that we don't need an enterprise agreement to specify how our academics will work together in a collegial way to develop and implement workload policies in their academic units. We do believe that on the basis of the processes and procedures that have been used in the past, academic units and academic colleagues have a pretty good sense of how these things ought to run, and that we really don't need to specify absolutely every step along the way. We are proposing that the mechanism for resolving any workload disputes would be shortened, and it would expedite the resolution of any workload disputes rather than having quite a prolonged and protracted series of steps that need to be gone through. So again, this is the sort of thing that we would like people to be able to resolve as quickly as possible.
Yes, and I will just mention that clause isn't on the web at the moment.
Yes, that's important.
So that will go up, we hope by the end of the week. So by tomorrow, or if not early next week, it will be up there.
Okay, so those of you who are interested in looking at the university is proposing, that clause will be up on the web very soon. I suppose there's just one final aspect that's quite critical in terms of a bit of a shift in what the university is proposing in relation to academic workloads. And the university recognises, and we continue to recognise, that an academic workload comprises three main components. The familiar ones, teaching curriculum and the associated scholarship, research activity, and governance and service contributions. We recognise that, and we certainly are not stepping away from an academic role having those three dimensions. But what we would like is a model that recognises that over time any individual academic will engage in varying levels of intensity in each of those dimensions.
That's right.
And it may vary by a semester, it may vary by year, but depending on interests, opportunities, career trajectory, and even life circumstances. People may, and most likely will, through their career as an academic, engage at differing levels of intensity in each of those components of being an academic. There may be some people who have a very balanced career throughout, but for many other people, they will want to engage more intensively in different components. And what we would really like to do, and what we're proposing, is a model that recognises that and allows academics to negotiate with their supervisor what that variation is going to look like and their performance expectations as a consequence. I'd note that we already have, through our new promotions system, a promotions mechanism that is anticipating this kind of view of an academic's role and an academic's career trajectory. And those of you who are familiar with our changed academic promotions policy will know that we're now looking at the whole of academic and asking people to present themselves as an integrated academic and to talk about the way in which they contribute to each of those dimensions and how they might have moved through those dimensions.
Denise, yes, without getting off the track, since you've brought up academic promotion, I think the work that Denise has done with her team around the revision of academic promotions, as in having more of a rolling opportunity than once a year, and people trying to meet that deadline, combined with the holistic look at what the academic is doing rather than trying to push people into specific holes, I think that will go very well, and this new model we're proposing will augur well for that model of academic promotions as well. So I hope people can see that what we're trying to put forward is a holistic view of academia and the academic work that our people are doing, which is terrific work, so we want to acknowledge that. But yes, I'd encourage you to engage with the documentation that we put on the web and come back with your comments. It's really important that we hear back from people.
Yep, great. Thank you, Susan. We don't have any questions from our audience at the moment. Probably if we think about just giving people an idea of kind of what next. Sure. So we've got some clauses for consideration at our next meeting. And I guess we should point out to people that our next meeting, so our meeting in 2 weeks' time, is the last of our originally scheduled meetings, and it really was our best guess anticipation for the first half of the year of how many meetings we'd need. It's our view that we're making good progress. As you know, it's a very long, very extensive enterprise agreement, and we're looking at 2 separate agreements. So we've been working our way through that. We're reaching the last set of clauses next meeting. So while it's the last of our scheduled meetings, we recognise that we need to do some consolidation. We also acknowledge that, as you would be aware, many of the clauses relate to other clauses. So as we've reached some agreement or in principle agreement about some changes to some clauses, we necessarily need to make sure that they're aligned through every reference and cross-reference through the agreement. So I think we've reached agreement with both the unions that we will schedule at least two more meetings, and they're 2 more formal whole day meetings, and hopefully at those 2 meetings we will pull together all of the work that we've done over the first half of the year. I think everybody's been working really hard and working very well together. So it has been, I think, a genuine, everybody is genuinely trying to reach a fairly speedy resolution, and we all do have the best interests of our staff at heart.
Absolutely.
And recognising that we may have slightly different philosophical positions about how an enterprise agreement might be represented or presented.
Look, I agree. One of the things I will mention is that yesterday we released the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Peoples Clause. It is largely rolled over from what currently exists. with a couple of very minor changes. The unions received that quite enthusiastically, and as you'll recall, Denise, a couple of meetings ago, we did have a member of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander staff come and speak to the bargaining team as well. So that clause will go up on the web this afternoon or tomorrow, and you will see very minor change. What we have done is, and this is consistent with other moves that we've taken throughout the agreement that the unions obviously have agreed with, is remove specific reference to titles and business units because things change. It in no way preempts that it will change. It simply acknowledges that as the university moves through its organisational objectives, that from time to time we do change structure. So, and that goes for the whole clause that we're not specifically mentioning. So where you see references to particular business units mentioned, we will have replaced that with wording to the effect of the appropriate unit responsible for, or something like that.
Right, and I think we've mentioned this previously in relation to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clause, and you know we are aware there are current discussions underway about the title, so the name of the unit Badinami, that the functions and a unit that delivers the services to our students and community that Badinami does will continue. If the community and our colleagues make a decision that it should have a different name, that will be a decision that's made, but the title is the piece that you're referring to, isn't it, Susan?
That's all I'm referring to.
Okay. So, Susan, I think at our next meeting we're going to talk about some really exciting things, position description and evaluations, descriptors and pay rates.
That's right.
Workplace health and safety.
That's right. There are a couple of things that we're scooping.
Oh, and broadbanding.
And broadbanding, things that we're scooping in as well that have come up in the past that we have moved to the 7th of June meeting. But broadbanding's an interesting one because we did ask for staff to give us feedback on their views on broadbanding, and we've had no response. So if you do have views on broadbanding and anything else that you would like to comment on or ask questions on, we very much would like to hear from you.
I don't know. We've got no questions, but I know we've got quite a lot of people who have been out there in the audience. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. I think we've covered off the key points. They're also summarised in the video that will be released either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So please, if you've got any questions or comments, please send them into the EB website. We've been specifically asking about broadbanding, but if there are any other questions that you might have or feedback that you'd like to give us, please do so. And thank you again for tuning in and continuing to engage. You know, we really do hope that we're going to bring this to a conclusion fairly soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to your feedback. Thank you.